Hello, Tracey. It's really lovely to have you here today. And you and I have been talking about employee well-being and just how much the world is changing at the moment, which is absolutely fascinating in different organisations. And I'd be quite curious to know, at your organisation, what have you seen happen that's really changed behaviours to enhance well-being among your employees?
I think, so YBS, so Yorkshire Building Society, we've been on the wellbeing journey for quite a while. So we really started to kick things off in 2017. And it was at a point where we were going through quite a lot of organisational change. And that in itself brought different types of challenges to the workplace in terms of resilience and having to face into things operating quite differently and some of the fear and anxiety that came with that. So I think there's probably two things that we did at YBS that I think really helped us in terms of moving the wellbeing journey on, and actually potentially three. One was we didn't really call it wellbeing. We didn't give it a name and we didn't give it a badge. We just started to talk about different subjects around, and our primary focus at the beginning was around mental wellbeing and resilience. So firstly, we didn't label it. The other thing that we did was we made it quite relevant. So it was connected to what people were feeling at that point in time. So when you are closing branches, if you are making changes to the way that you work, if you're asking people to do things a little bit differently, that we anchored a lot of the things that we were thinking about to the things that they were going through at that point in time. So there's a level of relevance. And also it means it felt quite authentic in that it was grounded in the organisation. I think the biggest thing that we did in terms of really driving out change was about starting a conversation and starting the conversation from the top. So we focused on mental health. We focused on how people coped with change, how they managed their day-to-day lives to build resilience. And one of the first things we did was our chief customer officer, a chap called Charles Canning, did an internet story and just talked about the things that he did to manage his own mental health and his own state. And it was low-key and it was quiet, but it was very open and it was very authentic, and that set the stage. So by having role models and senior leaders talking about this stuff, it allowed you to open that up. And it was something that we did with the mental health piece. We also did it again when we started to look at financial well-being. And I actually think financial well-being and money in the UK is a much bigger taboo to talk about than mental health. You know, mental health is talked about all the time. It's become quite an inclusive, open thing. It's become normal. 5-10 years ago, less so, but certainly now. Money still isn't. And particularly when you're a financial services firm, getting people to talk about money is, there's a whole host of stuff that comes with that. And we did a similar piece there where we started with colleague stories, and our chief risk officer talked about how he had managed finances in his younger days, maybe not as well as he would do it now. And again, it just started a dialogue. So I think one of the key things for us was around, we didn't label it. We made it relevant to what was happening in the business at the time. And we had some real role modelling at a senior level in terms of let's talk about this stuff. And then we built on that. Over time, the wellbeing agenda, whilst there are things that we push out from a central perspective around capabilities around talking about mental health, around budgeting pieces around financial health, various different things that we do, we've also really invested in colleague curation. We've created wellbeing champions. We set a group up around that, and they, to a huge extent, influence what we do. And they've shared their own stories. So we've had colleagues talking about the menopause, talking about going through fertility challenges, sharing stories around anorexia, and really personal pieces, which again created a community and created a lot of dialogue and conversation. So I think those have been the key things for us. We didn't label it, we made it relevant, and we made a community around it and told stories. And on the back of that, when we put interventions in there, that supported people really being open about engaging with them.
So it sounds like you've got a culture that was there before all this happened that helped the transition and your well-being. So I don't know if you would agree or disagree. Was there things in your culture that existed already that helped or hindered the way that you approached it?
I think so. You know, when we started to look at the organisational change piece in 2017, the first group that we supported with wellbeing was line managers, and we did that because we knew that the biggest YBS is a very caring organisation and it flows through the business. So if you're going through a lot of change, then actually people, leaders, their immediate view will be, how do I support my teams? And they will go there. And what we needed to do was help them do that and tap into that, and then help them think about how they supported themselves, experience some wellbeing interventions for their own sake, which then enabled them to do this even better for their teams. So there absolutely is this sense of support and care, and we capitalised on that to some extent by starting that. We use the term a lot around fixing your own oxygen mask. So actually do the self-care and then you can care for others. And also, if you're sceptical about it and you experience it and you see the difference it does for you, it makes for you, you might be a little bit more, actually, I'm going to do that for others. But to be fair, I think the biggest thing was permission. It was permission about time as well. I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, we're a really busy society, not in YBS, I mean as in society as a whole. And actually, particularly, people often use busyness, and this did happen in YBS, as a bit of a badge of honour and a bit of, I'm busy, I'm doing this stuff and I'm pulling all these things in and I'm delivering and I'm making a difference. And stopping and pausing to do that and looking after yourself felt counter to that. So some of the pieces around saying, if you do that, it will help you be a better leader. And if you create that space for your teams and you encourage them to do that, it will help them be better at what they do. Also help take away any of those potential challenges that might be there.